beautiful day. It's 90 some degree weather, and it's hard to complain in our industry when most of the US is having a heat wave.
Yeah, well, up in Canada, we're having a heat wave as well, but 97, what is that in Celsius? I actually don't know what the conversion of Fahrenheit to Celsius.
I have never had to do that math outside of some classes in high school that I very quickly got through.
36 degrees Celsius. So we're about that today in Canada. So there's a heat wave up here, there's a heat wave down there, and it's been lucrative for our HVAC company clients that we work with. So it's always good.
Oh, yes. Well, I love this time of year. This is when you can turn on the 6 a.m. news and catch all the stories where they're out talking to like the sweaty air conditioning tech in the field.
Mhm.
Always a pleasure to see that because that means everyone's busy. And uh, hats off to the guys who get themselves into those stories.
Yeah, I know. I think every marketer who works in, with HVAC companies or plumbing companies, they say there's no better marketing than a dramatic weather change, like a heat wave, right? That's always going to sell the most amount of air conditioners as anything. So
Yeah, I mean, this is a weather-driven business. I mean, we all like to pretend it's not, but it's a weather-driven business. Everybody's sales go up when it's hot and go down when it's cold, and then when it gets really cold, they go back up again.
yeah. Well, so Erik, we're going to have a really cool topic, really interesting topic that we've gotten into a couple arguments about. Arguments isn't really the best word, but battles on the importance of market share in
Wait,
an
I,
existing zip
a
code.
battle is more severe, in my opinion, than an argument. I just want to clarify that, like, an argument between states versus a battle between states is
Hmm.
absolutely. I would much argue. I think battle is like the next level, right?
But
Like that's swords and
you're
shields.
talking to a Canadian, so our battles are angry letters being sent back and forth.
This is a really interesting topic, talking about market share, and um, we have some different opinions on it. I'm going to let you get started today because I think the digital side of it is where most people are really focused right now, especially as we get into the busier times. And of course, just in general, digital has been a hot topic. So talk us through that process.
Our process, and it's very similar to your process, is in a city. If an HVAC company is in a major city, they're going to have, they're going to service the entire area plus surrounding. So what we're looking at is the individual zip codes or postal codes and what kind of market share that they currently have in that zip code or in that neighborhood. And we can determine that by pulling, and you're going to get into some really great reporting and great metrics later, but you can pull that based off of how much revenue over the last couple of years that you've done in that market, which is, again, we're talking about very hyper targeted markets. For digital, what I really like is, market share is another way for us to sort of say, like, how much brand equity do you have in the market? So we look at brand equity as, how recognizable is your brand? What's your brand recall? If can somebody recognize you? Are you the first person? Or are you top three that they think of when they need an air conditioning repair or et cetera? So
So
go ahead.
let me jump in there because I want to ask a question. So my original background is with the 1 Hour Group. That's where I started in the industry, and we were famous for getting what are called snap counts. I don't know if you're familiar with a snap count.
No,
have you done a snap count before?
no, go ahead. Explain
So
it.
a snap count's really easy. So they call around to people in a specific zip code or number of zip codes until they get 100 responses where that person can name your target industry. So if you're an HVAC company, plumbing company, etc. They call until they get 100 responses, and then your snap count is the number of times when someone was able to name a person or brand that fell into your industry, and you were the brand they named. So if you called and I got 100 people that could name an HVAC company, and then they named our company 39 times, our snap count would be 39.
Mm-hmm.
And that was supposed to give us an idea of how much market presence, market mind share we had,
Mm-hmm.
because it was how much recall, and what you were talking about was recall. did people have, but here was the thing I always found interesting about that number. Oh, the question I always had is how many phone calls did you have to make? How many
That's
people did it
important.
take in the market to, right, to get somebody that had 100 answers? And the answer was always thousands. It was thousands of phone calls to get 100 people who could name an air conditioning company. And so then I raised this question to you: how much does branding really matter?
Well, so we do it a little differently. So snap count, I haven't heard of that terminology before, but yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. It's a very traditional way of understanding market share. With the digital world, there's really cool technology that we can utilize YouTube for, and it's the surveys. So they go out to 50%, we show an audience. Let's say there's 1,000 people in a target audience. We run ads and only show 50% of them the client's ad, and the other 50% absolutely won't ever see our client's ad. And then we run a survey to both, and we ask them, like, how likely out of these 5 brands, which one have you recognized? And there's certain things called brand survey and brand lift. And what we've noticed is when we have branding in the market, we do see a massive recall using that medium. Now, I've also ran brand recall surveys on YouTube when I've increased traditional marketing. Like, I've bought, $100,000 worth of billboards in the city, and I utilized YouTube in that city to run a survey, and we saw a massive increase in brand recall. Now, what I wasn't able to do was isolate the why. Why did we see a massive increase in brand recall and brand lift? Because we did increase our digital spend and our traditional spend. And that was the one thing that I found, with these surveys, that is a little bit arduous, because you're looking at the entire brand equity and not really understanding or isolating the why, like you could with call tracking, or certain campaign tracking or certain promo tracking. You can really understand what medium works the best. However, for us, for digital, it isn't about what is your current market share. It is about what is your current campaigns doing to increase your market share. And so I look at a campaign pre-branding and post-branding. So let's say we run a campaign for 3 months, and we're analyzing, and we can analyze how well somebody is being branded in the market using Google Analytics. So if there's an increase in people searching the brand name, then I know that they have a better market share, or they have a better brand lift. If I'm seeing that they're getting a higher click-through rate on search ads for service keywords like air conditioner repair in their city, that's an indication that they're being noticed and they're being remembered. So if there's 10 businesses to choose on a Google search page, and our clients' click-through rate is increasing with with a brand campaign that's in the market, then I know that that's a good indication of, yes, branding is working. However, I don't analyze a market individually to determine where we should place ads based off of market share, but I look at it as a KPI to determine success of a marketing campaign.
Yeah, so let me jump on a couple of those things. So one, going back to your original point there as you were running through, when you see that lift in brand awareness, when you see that more responses to the survey where they know you, does that directly result in more sales?
It doesn't.
Are you
And
seeing the same lift in sales?
so they're not the same in terms of a measurement tool. So one is more just asking a client about brand recognition, if they can recall the brand, if they can remember it, as opposed to sales is a very important metric to, of course, track, and we do, but it's also understanding that in digital, it's not one campaign that allows a customer to choose your business. It's the entire customer journey. So we analyze it from, they saw a YouTube video 90 days ago, they saw 5 individual display ads, maybe on the weather network, or on a home improvement site. They read a couple blogs that is part of SEO, and then when they're ready to actually hire a business, they're going to Google, they're doing a search, and in the best case scenario, they're doing a search for the business name, but that means that that's a branded search. That means they already know who they want to do business with, and it's you. That's great. If you see an increase in people searching your business name, that's also an indication that your branding is working. I'm focused on, with Google search, the non-branded searches like air conditioning repair in your city. And so what I like to look at is, are people clicking your business when they do that search? Are they clicking your business more than the competitors? And in that scenario, they haven't chosen a business yet. They didn't put your business name in. They put furnace repair or air conditioning repair or plumbing repair. They don't know who they're doing business with at this point. Market share is irrelevant. They're going to pick the best person to do business with, and it's going to be based off of an ad, the ad that's appearing to them at that time. Now, if you have trucks in that area, then they're going to most likely remember your brand more, and it'll help them click your ad more. But it's not as relevant when somebody doesn't know your business name and they're doing a search like for a service.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on most of that. I think the timeline online that you often talk about, and this is one of our big disagreements, when customers start searching for stuff for HVAC, more so than plumbing, but not by much, they're searching because they need it today. They're not searching because after they read a couple blogs, after they look at a couple other things and watch a video, that they need a service. When they type in HVAC repair, it's because they need a repair like right now. And the timeline on getting that, once that customer goes to a site, your chances, unless they abandon that site, and why, if you're the site owner that they go to and abandon, you pretty much lost them at that point, because they need a service today, not in a week, not in a month, not, there's, and you talk a lot about the funnel, and I don't disagree with a lot of the ideas behind your marketing funnel, but I think the timeline is very, very short, and we're talking hours, not weeks or months. I mean, most people don't sit around and go, it's the pipe above my head is leaking a little more each day. It's,
No, but
there's a leak, I got to get somebody here.
But Erik, what they do 90 days prior or even a year prior, and this is what our data shows time and time again, is that we know what they're searching for prior to those really juicy keywords like roof repair or furnace repair or power surge or whatever that is. That they're very, very low down the funnel, but we also know when they're higher up in the funnel because they're clicking on your ads, they're looking at your blog. So 90 days prior to, maybe their furnace smells, maybe their air conditioner has loud noises, and they're doing searches like asking Google, why does my furnace smell, or why do I have a sore throat from my air conditioner? And your blog needs to show up and your videos need to show up, because that is the branding. You are helping them when they're not ready for your service, but they're asking the questions that are prompting us to know that they're probably going to need your service soon. And so, yes, it's great to hit them at the very bottom of that funnel, but we now can tell what the customer has been doing and what other sites they're searching and what other keywords and what they're else in the market for, which we've noticed that a lot of people are in the market right now for used vehicles. So you can target people who are in the market for similar things that your customers are in the market for, and start targeting them with ads prior to them telling Google, I'm ready for this service. So that's the key difference. Like, we can brand to people by predicting the likelihood that they're going to need a new air conditioner. And that's why market share doesn't necessarily affect us as much, but.
Yeah, and that statement right there is where I would begin to completely disagree with you, because I think the best branding tool, and I don't think you'll disagree with the statement, the best branding tool that any contractor has, doesn't matter the industry, is their truck. Your truck parked in front of somebody down the street. And it's, when people imagine it, they always imagine that I do a job here at, the Smith's house, and the Johnsons who live next door are good friends with the Smiths, and they talk to them, and the Smiths tell the Johnsons the great experience I had. And the next thing you know, I'm at the Johnsons' house. But that's, when you actually map out jobs, that's not how it happens.
Yeah.
Almost never are there jobs right next to each other. And I'm not saying referrals and things aren't great, but we tend to think that it's a lot more prevalent than it actually is.
Right.
Especially as you get larger in size. When you're a couple $100,000 or $1 million in size, it can be a relatively large percentage of your business simply because you don't have a lot of business, right? At $500,000, you're just not doing that many jobs a year, especially if you're doing HVAC installs. That's not that many installs. And so once you're $3 million in sales, $5 million in sales, $10 million in sales, 20, 30, 40, and on, that percentage goes way down because the number of those people who have that relationship with you, because if you remember when you were an owner and you were knocking on the door and you were living hand to mouth, right? You had to sell this unit today and take great care of this customer because you had to feed your family tonight.
And then you
It's
installed
different
it.
when you have,
You were the one
right,
installing
you
it on
installed it and
the side.
right, and you were telling them about the little kids you had at home that this furnace or air conditioner or pipe or whatever was going to feed, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
your technicians can tell some of those stories, but it's not the same. And so some of the personal touch, we turned it into systems. Some of that personal touch leaves, and so the percentage of those referral customers is just lower as you get bigger. And it really doesn't make up a huge percentage of most businesses. That's not to say it's not important. You want to get everyone you can. And there's almost none of the guy next door saw we did a good job. What it is, it's a guy down the street, the guy around the block, the guy a half mile down, but he drives down that road on his way home and he saw your van on the left side one day and he saw your van on the right side the next day. And then he went, I need an AC repair. Oh, that's the name of guys that I saw down the street, right, honey? Was that the one? And then they have that discussion. And that's the branding I think actually works, which is why when people talk about branding, what they usually mean is I'm going to send out advertising that doesn't get me any return, and I'm going to just accept that we'll never get any return.
So is
And
this,
I think that's funny.
I want to ask you a question here because I have, you know, I have so many questions about, mail outs and that kind of thing, but I get a lot of requests for the 5 rounds or the 4 rounds where, we know that this
Clover
job,
leafing, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then we want to put either door knockers or something, and the tech actually goes and puts the door knocker. And I want to know, is that kind of what you're talking about where, we're assuming that the people around the job are the juicy ones, but you're saying it's not necessarily just right around, it's the zip code. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Well, that assumption, yeah. Well, in clover leafing, you don't need me or you to do that. Get some door hangers, give them to your technicians, and the job is when they finish an install, when they finish a service call, they hang 4 door hangers on any street that they can.
Right.
Right? Some places you can't solicit. So make sure you know local laws. But outside of that, yeah, your technicians should be doing that, and you should be spot checking them to make sure they're doing it because it's a really cost-effective way to pick up jobs. But you won't pick up the number of jobs you think you will, right? Clover leafing is really effective because people will keep those slips. They'll keep those door hangers for years.
Mm-hmm.
Years. They'll tuck them into books and they put them in drawers, and then years later you'll get that phone call. I've seen from the company I used to work for, they were still 2.5, 3 years out from some door hangers we had, and we just littered neighborhoods with them. We just hired a kid, and he walked and hung door hangers on every on every street that didn't have a no soliciting rule, and he just hung them on every doorknob. And 2, 3 years after that, they were still getting phone calls from new customers on those door hangers. So I mean, I think that's a great idea. And the clover leafing is a good idea too because it's really cost effective. What is it? 4 door hangers cost a couple cents. I mean, they're cheap and they're relatively effective. But no, what I'm saying more is we tend to think that people have that discussion. I just had my air conditioner replaced last year. I'm very close with my neighbors on either side of me, and I've told them all about the experience I had getting my air conditioning replaced. Here's the thing: neither of them need to have their air conditioning replaced, so you don't get a call from them. I told them lovely things about it, and they just don't need the service. I've had a plumber to my house and I had a great experience with a plumber. He did wonderful work for me. And I don't remember if I did or not, mentioned it to the neighbors. I'm sure I mentioned to at least one of them, but they also just didn't need a plumber. How do I market to those homes and how do I drive within those homes? The better, stronger way to do it, in my opinion, is to drive more sales. And you want to be in more home visits. Branding, like I was saying before, tends to be this idea, the knowing about the truck and their brand and seeing their colors. And I'm not saying that there's not positive aspects to that, but A direct response piece will get you in a house, and your truck parked down the street will do a lot better than the ad on the radio station is likely to do. If people see 10 of your vans in that zip code, now you say, how do I get to that level of market share? And there are a lot of strategies to do that, targeting the right homes and focusing on the right people. And then again, those ads that ask for direct response. The thing I suffer with in branding so much is that people just accept that they're not going to make any money on it. And they're just, I'm just going to spend money that I cannot track, that I cannot see, that I cannot prove is actually doing anything for me. And I'm just going to go by gut feel that it's going well because by golly, more people went and read our blog this month.
I wasn't going to show you any of my fancy tricks today, but you're going to have to trust me without a graph here. I will tell you that in the last 2 years, my cost per lead on display advertising, on branding, on digital is lower than my cost per lead on search for all of my clients, every single one of them in Canada and in the US. And so that tells me that branding on digital is now not branding. It's now lead gen. And it's all about who you're targeting with what at what time. So when we're focusing on traditional branding, I'm talking about radio, TV, and digital branding is actually now I'm looking at it as a very valid, very, very cost-effective lead source. So it's more lead generation than it ever has been branding. It's just now I can actually prove to my clients that it takes the branding plus the search to bring a really good lead in. But yeah, I don't look at it like it's in the branding bucket necessarily when it's bringing $40, $50 cost per leads for my customer.
I have no problem with that. Yeah, if we're talking about something that has direct response, because that is where I struggle with branding conversations the most, is we get stuck into this thing, well, it doesn't have to produce. If it produces, if it's driving leads, if you can say, here's the number of dollars that came out of the cash register, and then the number of dollars that went back into the cash register, that's great. Mm-hmm. But that's direct response on some level. Right, you're going after it, and we just put it under the shield. And that's the other problem with the word branding; it's so all-encompassing. But where I really want to focus is the last point you made in your topic, which is focusing on markets where people don't have market share. So now you should see a photo on the screen, and this is a total lifetime harvest broken out by zip code, and I've got a couple of them here that we can flip through by company. And my point with branding is this. You can see here from the scale, the digital marketing, the radio, the television, all those things, and understanding that you can now, especially now, get a lot more selective in where you're targeting your digital marketing, right?
Right.
Especially the last few years. You can really narrow it down. In fact, you can go all the way to geofencing an individual home, which is a bad idea for reasons you and I can have a whole nother podcast about.
I would never recommend
too
it.
Much cost.
You would never get the
I wouldn't either. So we'd be in too much agreement on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
But all of that branding, all of that work, pushing into those individual markets, the sales in these zip codes, and this is over 13 years, have never changed. They are the same now, and the top zip code is still by far the largest sales plateau they're going to hit. And it's 70%, or I'm sorry, it's 30% higher than the best zip code. These zip codes out here have been affected by a lot of the same things. And I promise you that for some of the clients we're going to flip through here, they have marketed, as we look at another one, here's a larger company, more sales, again, 14 years worth of data. You can see the disparity between zip code number one. And then as we go down, I mean, you've got a drop of almost 40% here. You've got another 20% here. These are the zip codes that matter. And this is where branding will work. This is where marketing will work. They're going to get the best response. All of these zip codes, they have no market share in, right? And they never have. All of the different things they tried over 15 years, and I haven't talked to all of these clients for 15 years. And as we're going to continue to flip through, again, large company, you can see the disparity between zip code number 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 5. All of these zip codes out here, though, they're not doing $100,000 in the vast majority of it. And they never
I'm
have, and they
curious.
probably never will. I mean, when we go to a smaller market, and that's why I wanted to put this one here, here's a market that I'm very familiar with. You can see the difference between zip code 1, zip code 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And this is, by the way, one of the, you can see out of that top zip code, they have gotten $28 million. That's $2 million a year over 14 years. And basically at that rate.
Have you analyzed their address
So,
compared to like the physical address of their office in that zip code? Like, does it have a
yeah,
relation to do with the GMB, or is that not always the case?
not always the case. In their case, they actually moved a few years ago, and it did take a little ding for about a year, but then it popped right back up. They are in the best zip code here, and it is a big driver. But all of these zip codes get the same branding, they get the same advertising, they get the same digital as this zip code.
Except for that they get better placement on Google in that zip code
Well,
because
but
their
not
physical address is
they
there.
they do now, but they haven't for the whole 14-year period or the 12-year period in their case. They
Right.
have not gotten it for all of those years, and yet consistently that zip code outperforms. I mean, you can see the disparity between the two, right? Yes, they get better Google placement, but I don't think Google placement takes in $28 million in sales versus basically $10 million in sales, right? I mean, that's a huge fall off.
I can prove that it definitely has an effect over it. Because
Oh, I'm not saying that Google placement doesn't have an effect. I don't think it has this effect.
we'll get into this later and we can talk specifics about the data, and then maybe you and I can make a chart where it shows both of them combined and get into the.
Well, we have some mutual clients, so we could actually do that.
Yeah.
For an actual client that we share together and walk through that process, because here's the thing. I mean, it doesn't matter, and they all look the same, right? We look at all of them. There are zip codes that matter and there are zip codes that don't. And if you go out here into the zip codes that don't, right, there's the ones in the intermediate. And this is where I will give you the credit on the digital side. I think when there's a zip code that you don't matter enough in for maybe some real direct marketing, right, where some branding might help, where we're putting out some digital ads might help drive some phone calls, especially during the real hot times or real cold times of the year when there's just a lot of people are jammed up. There's not as much opportunity. I mean, that's obviously the best time to grow market share is when there's a surge. Right now in the US is a great time. In Canada too, you were saying. It's a great time to pick up some market share because everybody's flooded. If you're not flooded right now with business, this is a great time to really put yourself out there and pick up those opportunities because you have availability when no one else does.
Well,
and that's how you kind of steal some market share.
3 months ago was a good time for you to start, actually, but that's neither.
Well, but right now, if you're going to steal market share, if you're going to play, yeah, you're probably right. It's a little late right now, but I don't know that 3 months ago may have been too far out. I'm saying if I want to come in and hijack your market share, because one of the other things is you got to look at the value of the market, and these are the same for this zip code versus these zip codes versus these zip codes. The opportunity in the market is another question. And, how much business is happening in that zip code every single year, right? I mean, that has to be part of the equation you're doing. If a zip code's not worth very much, if it's only worth $400,000, $500,000 in sales, it's easier to grow in that market share, but also it's easier to become dominant in that market share, right? So if I'm the big player in that zip code and you want to come bull your way in here, it's a lot harder when there's no market share to steal from me. On the other hand, if it's a $2 million zip code and I do $100,000 or $50,000 in sales, I'm nobody in that market. Nobody at all, because no one's waiting around for Erik's Heating and Air to knock on their door. They go, I'm hot, I'm calling somebody. These are the guys whose trucks I see on the street.
Or they're not doing that and they're actually just going to Google and searching my air conditioner broke or air conditioner repair or new air conditioner, and it's irrelevant how much market share was there because they're picking one of the 10 that show up on the Google page or one of the ads or one of the local service ads, And at that point, you definitely want, and you want the market share, you want people to choose you. So it gives you a better batting percentage. Erik, never let fear of striking out keep you from playing the game. And Babe Ruth told us all that. And so just because they don't have market share in that zip code doesn't mean we can't try. And with digital marketing, it might not be as effective, but it'll still be effective and it'll still allow you to grow.
So we're not playing baseball here. This is gambling, right? And if you have a problem, just pick up the phone. There are people who can help you. They will take care of this gambling addiction that you have, because if you just say, I want to have market share here, and then I reference the sales you have in that market and they are zero, $50,000 in a zip code that has, $2 million worth of opportunity, it is a really, really bad bet. It will fail 100 times more often than if you put that same money into a top rated zip code. Now, once those zip codes have maximized their potential, no, this is with all products. This is not with just my product. This is the beauty of having numbers for lots and lots and lots of companies. If you focus on an area, let me go back here. If you focus on a zip code where you have, you don't have to be dominant market share, but are in the market share conversation, where in a zip code with $2 million in sales, you're doing $250,000 in sales. It is always going to be more effective in all fronts, through all sources of marketing, than if you go to a zip code where you have $25,000 in sales in a $2 million market. So this is a gambling. We're gambling here, right? So if I don't use this graph, if I don't make that part of what we're doing, and I'll stop my screen share here so we can look at each other more clearly now. If I'm going to hedge my bets, I mean, this baseball is not the game we're playing, right? We are sitting down at the blackjack table and we're playing odds, because all marketing, and I love when people talk about marketing as an investment. Marketing is not an investment, it's a gamble. The marketing you or I or anyone else send out tomorrow can be flushed down the toilet by a good week of rain.
Okay, but it is a gamble when you're paying for an ad, or when you're paying for an impression, or when you're paying for a piece of mail, blanketing anything, or even if you're hyper targeting it and you're not getting a return on investment. However, with digital marketing, you only show your ad to somebody in your target market. When they do a search for what you do, you get to decide how much you pay Google for it. You put it on your credit card, so you don't pay it until after you collect the revenue. And at the end of the day, is if you're full, you can shut your ads off. So while we do say, yeah, it's gambling, this is the most low risk form of gambling, because you only pay when someone clicks your ad, and you're only showing your ad when somebody has done a search in your market for the service that you do, and then you get to pick how much you pay for it. There is no better form of gambling than a sure.
Wait. Let's understand this though. Of course, we're playing blackjack, and Google is the house. So you're not winning, Google's winning, because we're just playing by their rules, right? And Google gets to decide who does and doesn't see unless you pay their ransom. I mean, that's fine. That's the rules we're all playing by. You gotta ante up if you want to sit down at the table. That's just the way it works. And if you wanna keep playing, you got to keep throwing chips down on the table. It's the way the game goes. I don't disagree with any of that. However, when you are hyper targeting, and I would go so far as to say you don't have to hyper target that much. You should just look at, there's a 60-40 split in a zip code, and you go, these are good prospects and these are bad prospects. I want to focus on the people who have money, live in the right houses. I mean, that's not hyper targeting. That's going, yeah, I don't really want to go to the 35-year-olds who just bought a 2-year-old home. They're not going to spend any money with me, and I'm not going to keep them around long enough to get any money out of those houses. So we're all targeting to some level. But the payoff, the whole gamble side of it that you're talking about, not every hand is the same, right? If I flip over and I show an ace and a king, that's a pretty great hand. That's not the game you're playing though, because you don't get to pick which houses you go to as well as you do with hyper targeting when you're branded. Because someone types in, I have an AC repair, they might be the 35-year-old couple in a house down the street. And I really, on a day when I'm maxed out, especially, well, in general, I don't want that customer.
I
I
can do
want my
that though.
competitor to get that customer.
But I can do that with Google. So I can show an ad only to certain demographics, only to certain people
Sure.
that are in the market for certain things. There's a lot of different ways to target based on things other than address. Like, did they click one of my ads? How likely are they going to buy? And using Google's machine learning and their models or their smart bidding, you can rely on Google, or you can use a marketing agency that sets the bids to your profit level for every single one of your keywords. And that is really where you do get to game the system. You're counting cards, if you will, because you're not letting Google bid higher for you on your behalf just because you're not getting placement in an ad. So it's about, when we say we're talking about baseball, it's batting averages, it's understanding data and knowing that when you put your best batter up at the very end to clear, I'm not a baseball fan yet, but to clear the bases, you want to have somebody.
It's fun to watch you try to make the analogy.
You want to have somebody who can hit it like, okay, I'm done. I can't even talk about baseball anymore, and I'm going to have to come back when I can have a better analogy coming. But it's about data and analyzing what ad works the best for what customer at what time, and then making that based off of percentages.
So then let's go to the data. How many of those repair customers does it take to make one install?
It depends on the individual business, because I have some that have trained their technicians to sort of tee up the sales guy to go in and make a sale. And the guys that
I understand that.
So for me, it's not as easy as just bidding on a search that's new air conditioner. Those are obviously the best keywords to search for. They're just not being searched for enough.
No. And
that they're just,
that's not what I'm implying. Yeah, that's
right. And so for the service keywords, they think that they need a repair, and so they're going to search repair. Like I say that people search duct tape before they search repair, because they're hoping that they don't have to actually pay money to get something fixed. But they don't know that they need a new install until a repair guy or a technician has told them that they need it. And so 90 days before somebody needs an install, because they're doing searches for repair. They're doing, they're asking questions on Google. They're asking Google Home. They're asking Alexa certain questions about their air conditioner. And we know that they're going to need.
I'll give you that on some people. But let's not paint with too broad of a stroke here, because I don't think that's the vast majority of people. There are a lot of air conditioners that just break. There are a lot of air conditioners and plumbing. People don't go, I think there might be a leak in that pipe in a month. I better start looking now in case that breaks. I mean, that person probably
do. They absolutely do. How do I know if there's a leak in that pipe? That is the search that they're conducting 90 days before, and the data shows it. You can go onto Google Trends and you can say, hey, Google,
But it's a small percentage. That's what I'm saying.
It's more and more prevalent because of
we're not talking about 100%.
Hey, Google, why does my furnace smell? People are now using voice search. And what Google is returning is web content. It's blog content on somebody's site. So when you're pushing out a blog, you have to answer the questions that people are searching prior to them knowing that they need a furnace repair or an air conditioner repair or a new roof. And that's how people are searching. And in the last 3 years, you saw a massive increase in people asking Google questions because of technology like voice search. And so we now have to answer content in the way that people are searching. You always have to understand that, people are moving and shaking and changing, and new apps are coming out. And so it's important to know that the changes in search have really affected how you have to write content to show up for those searches. It isn't about the very end, last time that they do a search. It's about everything that they've done prior to that and being strategic to push them along so that they do choose you when they do need
to. So let me, what's the percentage of people who you can track all the way back and show where they started 90 days out? We're not talking about 100% of customers here.
So I know through Google Analytics, you can go into, there's a certain report that you can pull in if you've connected Service Titan revenue or House Call Pro revenue or Successor revenue into Google Analytics, and you're reporting on, the ad that brought in the revenue. What you can also do is turn on what's called lead attribution or multi-touch attribution in Google Analytics. This allows you to then take the, let's say it's $1,000 you rang out or you transacted with that customer, and they had a search ad, they clicked an organic listing, they did a video, watched your video on YouTube and saw a Facebook ad. It can attribute 25% of that revenue to each one of those interactions along the journey. It's up to you what you value. If you'd rather give the credit of the revenue to the last click, that's also an option, or the first click, that's also an option. But it's important that you know, what did the customer do up until that very end of the funnel, because that's really where you want to focus your branding efforts, is the people that clicked on a search ad or did that furnace repair or air conditioning repair. Why aren't I branding to them? Let's figure out what they did prior to doing that search and target them so that they're more likely to choose me when they're at the bottom of the funnel.
Hey guys, she wants me to tell you to subscribe to this channel. I'm not even sure what that means. I think it has something to do with cable TV. Thanks.